And you're like, okay, what seed is Nebraska going to be in the NCAA tournament? And now you're like, are they even going to make the Big Ten tournament? And that's 2 weeks later. Literally, the Big Ten's taking 15 teams to the tournament. Nebraska is tied for 17th in the league right now.
Welcome into Nebraska Shootaround. Anna and Mike joining you now. Mike, let's just address this loss right off the bat because I know you have a lot of feelings, and I just want you to tell it how it is to Husker fans right now after the
Yeah,
loss.
um, the USC game. USC is they're tough. Like they're not big. They're about 6'7" across the board, but they play hard, and that's something that Eric Musselman's teams always do. And Nebraska played hard. It wasn't for a lack of effort. It absolutely was not. Um, but it was the toughness plays. The first two possessions of the game, they couldn't secure a rebound, like an offensive rebound. The ball just went out of their hands and out of bounds. Like that's insane, right? Like how do you that to me that's a toughness play or a mental toughness play where you just lose focus, concentration, something, and the ball just goes like you had two hands on the ball and it just goes out of bounds. It wasn't they weren't even like jumping for the ball. So those things. And then the sloppy turnovers are back or came back last night after kind of not as much the last couple of games. Yes, they were losses. But you know, your starting point guard just kind of throws a lazy pass at the top of the key that gets stolen, and literally the person he's passing to it is 5 feet away, and the ball gets stolen, and it's a run out. It's a pick six for to the other end. Um, Obviously, the last play of the game against USC, your two best players had miscommunication, and the ball gets thrown out of bounds, and there you don't get a shot off to even try and tie the game. So where is it? Is it the mental thing? I think that's what Fred Hoiberg and the team is talking about, toughness, like those type of plays. Also 50-50 balls. They lost a number of those against USC, and that's a physical toughness thing where they just are getting out tough. It's a tough spot for Nebraska to be in right now. They've lost, obviously lost five in a row for the first time since January of 2022 when they literally just fell off a cliff that year and lost 10 in a row from January to February 5th. I think it's January 2nd to February 5th. They lost 10 in a row. So could that happen to this team? It could. Like, it really could. I guess I look at it like, tell me that the wins that are on the schedule, they're like, yes, they're definitely winning that game. There aren't any of those left, like, especially now. So, yeah, that game was a little tough to sort of watch because Nebraska did a good job against the things that have been hampering them. 3-point defense, they did a great job of that, except for AG, who came into the game making 6 threes, and last night he made what was he? I'm sorry, 4 of 6 last night from three, and they just adjusted. USC adjusted. I asked Coach Musselman in the post game press conference, like, what did you see to get Desmond Cloud in ball screen action? And then he mentioned like we were gonna just set a little flare, I guess. And he didn't say that, but what happened was he set a little flare screen, and AG just flare screen, and Desmond Cloud found him. They found him. And then when Nebraska adjusted to that, they adjusted over the top. Like they started throwing over the top with a cutter to the basket. So yeah, it was a little bit frustrating. It felt like very much so felt like a must win game against a team, USC team that came into having 11 wins, and 6 of those were against quad 4 opponents before last night.
Yeah. I mean, they needed it. They needed it for their resume, and they needed to break out of that slump. And I mean, you look at Juwan Gary, a guy that has a career high 27 points, and he's extremely emotional in that post-game press conference talking about how he wants to fight for this team and he's not going to give up, and how it does suck right now. He acknowledges that. But, I mean, Juwan Gary just wasn't enough. And it's sad to see for that Nebraska fan base. I think everyone's just disappointed.
Yeah, it's one of those, you had all this momentum off of last year, making the tournament, and everyone thought, okay, this could be the time they win a game. And then this year you get those 2 guys back,
right?
Juwan and Brice, the kind of leaders of the team back, and it's just kind of falling apart right now. Can they correct it? Maybe. I'm not so sure about that, to be honest. I don't know where the psyche, the energy, all that during like pregame was there. Like they were locked in, they were normal, like nothing was like body language throughout the game. I don't think was bad. None of that. I just not sure if the pieces fit so much this year like they did last year. And that's kind of a little bit of a concern. I mean, right now, so when they beat UCLA, that was 2 weeks ago, right? 2.5, whatever. They beat UCLA. And you're like, okay, what seed is Nebraska going to be in the NCAA tournament? And now you're like, are they even going to make the Big Ten tournament? And that's 2 weeks later. Literally, the Big Ten's taking 15 teams to the tournament. Nebraska is tied for 17th in the league right now. So, like, it's a little like dicey right now. And the next coming up, it doesn't get any easier at all.
Do you think the only way Nebraska makes March Madness now is going to the Big Ten tournament and winning it, or coming very close to winning it?
Well, I think it all depends on how this next little stretch goes. I think you look at these 3 games and you're at Wisconsin, which is tough because it's 11 a.m. on a Sunday. For some reason, the Big Ten likes to schedule Nebraska at 11 a.m. on a Sunday. That's kind of absurd, to be honest. But you're traveling to Wisconsin, then you come home to Illinois, who's a very good team. Which, by the way, hey, USC beat Illinois at Illinois, so like anything can happen. And then you go to your Pacific Northwest trip for back-to-back games against a really good Oregon team at Oregon, and Washington, who is currently last in the Big Ten, but they are in every single game. So, like, that's your next 4 games. They're tough. They're really tough every day. I was St. Thomas and I have a like good relationship because he went to high school here, and I got there early enough, and I was just watching, hour and a half of warm-ups, if you will. And Saint came over, sat down, talked to me, and he was talking about the league and just how hard it is. And we both kind of agreed that every single night, you just never know. You never, like, anybody can beat anybody every night. So I don't know what the fix is. They tried, Nebraska tried a new starting lineup last night with Aaron Eulis, but like he's not a scoring threat. So what do you not like Raleigh Wooster is either really at this point, besides just, he's really good in the post at times. Maybe they have to go back to Brice Williams being the point guard, which is something that they did not want to happen or plan for. He did it last year a lot, but yeah.
Well, if there's something that is there something like this team needs to fix? Like, is there anything you can point to, or is it truly just that mental toughness you were talking about?
Yeah, I think it's probably the mental toughness piece, and they got to get more, like, they have to play off 2 feet. Fred Hoiberg said that last night. I mean, there's a lot of times like travel and like they're traveling or falling down too much, and like you're fighting for a rebound and you grab it and you kind of fall down, or you're falling down out of bounds, and those are like just sound play off of 2 feet decisions, and I think that's probably the easiest. That's a back to the basics kind of conversation. And frankly, like Brice Williams is their best player, and I'm not so sure he wants to be. Like I mean, there's times where he kind of just defers or goes away. Now he's their best player. He's clearly their best player, best scoring threat, and all that. But there's times where he needs to probably just say, "Give me the damn ball, and I'm gonna go make a play." So those are that's I think he defers a little bit too much at times. Now, last night USC did a really good job defending him and kind of banging him a little bit and being physical with him in the first half, and that's when Juwan Gary stepped up and scored all his points. But yeah, they got to find. They had a kind of third scorer with Connor Essegian against USC, and he's a come off the bench, give you buckets guy.
Yeah.
So they got to find a way to get Berke Buchtenjel doing stuff like that's not crazy. Like he just needs to like calm down a little bit. And find a way to get him to score. Like, frankly, it is what it is. Like, they just have to find a way.
All right, well, let's flip over to the happy side of basketball at Nebraska.
Let me say one more thing about the men's team and like the kind of looking at last year to this year.
Yeah.
Keisei Tominaga was a great scorer shooter of the basketball. He is not the reason why this team has struggled right now. It's Rink Mast. Losing Rink Mast was huge. And I think they thought they were going to get that with Berke or Andrew Morgan, and they just don't have that. They just can't. They're not that guy. Like Rink, at the top of the key, you have a 5 like that, and even Derek Walker was a guy like that for Nebraska that can initiate some offense. Is a good passer and all of those things. And they don't have that this year. And losing Rink is a much bigger impact than losing Keisei Tominaga.
That's a good point. And I'm sure it kills you watching him sit there in a polo on the bench because this team could really use him.
Right.
Hoping for a great recovery for Rink. But yeah, let's move over to the women's side. A team that has won 5 in a row, 12-0 at home this season. That win streak even goes back to 15 games, 16 games from last season too. Best in the Big Ten. They've been on a roll, 6-2 in the conference. Like I mentioned, 5-0 in those last 5 games, and they have more tests coming up as well. When you look at that schedule, what stands out starting with Sunday against Ohio State?
Yeah, Ohio State's top 15 team in the country, and then Purdue's kind of at Indiana is a tough game, especially on a Sunday at 11 a.m. Then Michigan and Iowa again, but Iowa's at home on a Monday night, which should be very loud. Is that the way I should say that? Yeah, I mean, the women's team is playing great, and they had that little stretch of 3 games where they played against top 25 teams and lost. 2 of the best teams in the country, 2 teams that are going to be fighting for a national championship. And then I think beating Michigan State really gave them a lot of confidence. I really do. And then the win at Iowa, where Britt Prince kind of like, all right, I'm gonna be the person here, right? Like I'm gonna be I'm gonna be the woman, and like I'm just gonna take it. And I think that step back 3 to tie the game that clip, it's amazing. And I think that kind of gave her some like, all right, like I'm here now. Because at the beginning of the year, she was kind of a little, not aggressive, if you will, at the basket. I think she was feeling things out, figuring things
Not
out.
as assertive for sure.
Yeah, and even Amy said that at the beginning of the year, like, there was a couple of press conference times where I I asked or someone else asked. I remember asking once about it, and it was kind of like, how do we, like, like, how do you get Britt going a little more? Like, we want more from her. And Amy basically said the same thing. And it's been a process, and she's been phenomenal. I mean, she's the player freshman of the week.
Yep.
And then she backed that up against Wisconsin, who, isn't great, obviously. But, I mean, she had a 14-point game, and she had 7 rebounds and 2 assists and 3 steals, and 10 of those points. Like, she had a spurt in the second quarter that just ended the game, where she scored 7 of their first 10 in this quarter. And she was great. Like, she was great. And and then Amy after the game again was like, yeah, she's just getting more comfortable. So I think this team's kind of figuring out roles. I think the 2 big injuries with Potts and Widener really kind of affected them at times. The Potts one was early enough, and then the Widener one was like just a tough.
Really could use that depth.
Yeah, I mean, they have 10 healthy players right now, right?
Yeah.
So like, and the 2 that are injured would have played very key roles this season for them. So they're figuring it out more. And I mean, Alexis Markowski is, every time she plays, there's some sort of record or something that she's breaking. Like, she just continues to be a monster. So it's good. And Jessica Petrie was great, and Kendall Moriarty has really stepped up in that kind of, hey, my team needs me off the bench role too, a little bit, or scoring role at least.
Yeah.
She did against Wisconsin, had a career high 17 points.
Hey, and I mean, going back to that Iowa win too, Markowski fouls out, and this Nebraska team still wins. I think that says a lot about them too.
Yeah, one thing, like, Petra Bojan was, when she got here, is like, okay, this is going to be a process. Like, it's going to take some time. And even against Wisconsin, she was good. I mean, she was +6 in her 12 minutes and had 10 points, and I mean, 4 fouls. But that's part of the deal. I mean, I think she's really kind of like gotten more comfortable as the season's gone along, and they're going to need her. They're going to need her kind of size to come in and help, at least literally do what she did against Wisconsin. It was 10 points. You'd like a little more than 2 rebounds, but give us 7 and 4 rebounds in. If you can 7 and 4 rebounds in 10 to 12, 14 minutes, that gives Alexis a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
And then give us those 4 fouls too, 5 fouls. Who cares? Like, that's what we need you for. So I think it's really helped, and they've made some kind of adjustments to a little bit against Wisconsin. They kind of adjusted a little bit defensively that seemed to work, and they were just finally made shots to kind of stretch that game out, because Wisconsin was playing a soft 1-2-2 kind of 3/4 court press, and it kind of slowed Nebraska down because they weren't able to get stops and then get in transition. And once that happened, it just kind of exploded.
Well, looking ahead to that Ohio State matchup, winning that, I mean, you're talking about a Nebraska team that will be ranked in the top 25. They're already receiving votes. And then it's a matter of, if you take care of business the rest of the Big Ten schedule, how high can their seed line be, I think, at this point?
Yeah, I mean, they're clearly an NCAA tournament team. I don't think that they would have to go on a massive losing streak here, and I don't see that happening. Yeah, I mean, if they can get to, I don't know, maybe top 5 in the league-ish, like finish the season that way, you're obviously like USC or UCLA and USC are going to be at the top of the league. Indiana's pretty good. They're probably NCAA tournament team. Iowa's an NCAA tournament team. Ohio State's an NCAA tournament team. Michigan State's an NCAA tournament team. Like the league's really hard. Yeah, keep going. The league's really hard, and can they be in that upper third, right? Like that's kind of the target, and then it's do they get a home game, like home weekend kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean it's on the table.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun, right?
Yeah,
like,
imagine Nebraska hosting the first and second rounds for their women. Like that would be incredible.
I don't know when I would have to look and see if that's ever or when that's happened. Because
has that ever happened? That's a good.
I don't know. Like I'm guessing probably at some point, but it's probably been a while, right? Yeah. So can they do that? That means you're like, what? You got to be top 16.
15,
yeah,
15 at least.
Yeah.
But there's other factors that go in. Like, is Pinnacle Arena available? There's other factors that go in. You basically put in a bid to the NCAA, and
I'm not sure if they even did that yet. You'd probably have to do that already. And no, I don't think Pinnacle Arena is going to be available because
they got monster trucks.
No, the Nebraska State Boys basketball tournament is the week after the Big Ten tournament, the women's Big Ten tournament. So I'm not sure. Yeah. And you can't play at Devaney.
I don't know.
You can't play at Devaney. You can play a high school game there.
That would be electric, Mike.
You can play a high school game there. You can't play.
No, that's not enough seats. No.
Yeah. And just the way this court is, it's a smaller.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
The taped down 3-point lines and taped down out of bound lines and
that's
stuff.
That's not NCAA.
They're not going to go for that.
Approved. No.
Yeah.
Hey,
they could play at CHI or Sokol or something.
They could. But moral of the story is they're an NCAA tournament team. It's a matter of how high they can go in that seed line, which truly does matter, especially in the women's game because of that disparity between a lot of teams. It's basically how many games until you don't have to play a number 1 or number 2 or 3 seed.
Right. Yeah. So you don't want to be on that. Like you want to be a high enough seed where you're not going to.
Yeah, it's not win one game and then you're playing UCLA.
Yeah, you don't want to you don't want to be in the same region where you have to travel to a 1 or 2 seed.
No, exactly. So, well, exciting stuff for the women's side, some stuff to work on for the men's, but who knows? Maybe they figured out they win 5 in a row and we're having a different conversation in a couple weeks here. So
they're not. The thing with the men is like they're not getting just outside of Purdue and Michigan State. They're not just getting killed. They're just not making enough plays, to win a close-ish game.
Hey, well, we don't have all the answers for you, but we're going to talk about them. So we'll talk to you next time on Nebraska Shootaround. Thanks so much for joining us.